Good evening, welcome to All About Auckland. I'm Kane Glass. This week we're at Pine Harbour Ferry Terminal with the morning commuters. Pine Harbour is about 35 kilometres from the CBD. It'll take you 35 minutes to get to town on the ferry. Take the car on the motorway, could be upwards of an hour and a half. In this week's show, Auckland Council gets into the housing finance market and the cost of growth studies stalled yet again. But first we go to Britomart for the launch of the Public Transport Users Association.
I'm very proud of this new organisation, so kia ora tātou. Thanks for being here, and it's my pleasure to be the chair of the new Public Transport Users Association being launched here today. There are many reasons to support this new grassroots advocacy group. Public transport trips, patronage and services continue to grow with the investment made in recent years. And while we're right to celebrate the successes of that investment, initially overseen by the ARC, we should always take care to ensure that this investment offers the best deal for users. We want to make sure that those who do the right thing by taking the bus, train or ferry are getting a fair go. There are great organisations out there, such as the Campaign for Better Transport and Generation Zero, attending to the big picture strategic issues. We've got the AA representing car drivers, but there's also a gap for a complementary group such as ours, acting as a voice for the travellers, on the street waiting for buses, on platforms waiting for trains, and at ferry terminals, and all those who ride on them. Auckland's public transport is, in so many ways, a success story. Its success is in spite of disproportionate funding for roads, historic underfunding for public transport, antipathy from central government, competition in the sector that means service providers can gain the best routes and leave the less desirable needing subsidies or unattended. We have long bus journeys made even longer because they wind through suburban streets, a lack of bus priority measures, buses that don't come, connecting services that drive off without you, terminus points that are exposed to rain and wind, hop cards that swallow credit, real-time passenger information that is not real or on time, bus shelters that offer none. Our railway system is dogged by signal failures, train faults and operational problems. But still, many of us use those services as believers in the public good of public transport, seekers of alternatives to the car, knowers of the relative benefits of not having to drive. But I'm also here to support the Public Transport Users Association for other reasons. I'm a public transport user myself and have always been. That takes some doing from Kumeu, where I live, dependent on the bus, when most services wind through suburban West Auckland. Spending an extra 30 minutes on a tangential route on top of an already long journey every time the bus has to rejoin the motorway tests anyone's commitment. It's not a journey for the queasy or those in a hurry. Despite the Western Ring Route and the Northwestern Bus motorway expansion pumping billions of dollars into ultimately more congested lanes, there is no dedicated congestion-free bus corridor to serve the current hundreds of thousands of West Auckland residents, nor the hundreds of thousands to come. And despite the creation of fast-track special housing areas on the city's periphery, there's no commitment for a busway for generations, if at all. Meanwhile, Auckland Transport plans to close the Western Line beyond Swanson and to leave the existing stations at Waitakere and at Huapai to rot. We challenge the logic that fails to meet the existing multimodal transport needs of Auckland and the northwestern growth area, and the illogic that fails to address these needs in the future. We've got a railway line, we've got the stations, we've got the diesel rolling stock, we've got the growth to justify better public transport services, and we've got the public support. What we haven't had is an organisation that supports the retention and extension of rail services to the west, but in the Public Transport Users Association, now we have. We believe that public transport users in Auckland and New Zealand deserve a dedicated grassroots voice. We know that public transport users out there have a litany of sorry tales about poor, unreliable service, of letdowns and rip-offs. But we know that public transport offers many benefits for public transport users too. There are some great infrastructure, sensible routes, friendly and courteous drivers. Our challenge, working with others in the public transport space, is to ensure good value for money, reliable, user-friendly services, a level playing field for all travellers and a common, decent standard for all. Based on our initial response, we expect to be inundated with public transport horror stories. Our aim is to make all those stories better. We'll be improving the moving, and we look forward to the journey. Thank you.
Welcome everybody to, this is actually the first official launch, well, it is the official launch of the Public Transport Users Association, which is designed to be at a grassroots level for all public transport users, first of all in Auckland, and I'm sure it's going to go around the country, thanks to the expressions of interest I've received over the last few days before we even went officially live. We've assembled a really great team over the last few months of people who understand public transport and the massive needs our community has for more public transport. Now, as the others will probably remind you, there are other organisations promoting public transport, but the difference with us is we are pretty much there just for the public transport users who are on buses, trains and ferries today. So we want to make sure that they have a voice for once, and should issues arise that don't get satisfactorily covered by the organisations like Auckland Transport, for example, though they know that they can come to us and we can take up the issues for them. Our focus is actually this, Public Transport Users Association, so it's the users. It's basically it's the bottoms on the seats. It's who catches a train or a bus or a ferry today, and the future ones as well.
You talk about doing a survey. What sort of survey are you looking at doing?
What we want to do is we're going to turn up to ferry terminals, railway stations, bus stops, and actually survey people and ask them how do they like the services? What are the issues? Do the buses come on time? How do the real-time information systems work? Because we want to get a really good understanding of what the issues are for actual users. I'm a user, but we're actually all probably users who are part of this group, but we want to find out what the issues are in the different modes and in different locations around Auckland.
And once you've identified those issues, what's the plan?
Right, what the plan is then is we'll look at those issues and then we'll actually go to Auckland Transport. We'll say, right, here's a key issue that's turning up, or maybe it's a trend developing everywhere around the Auckland isthmus, and we'll say to Auckland Transport, look, here's an issue here, what are you going to do about it? Because it's affecting public transport users, and we want to know what they can do about it.
Well, Auckland Transport's a big monolithic organisation. Whose door are you going to be knocking on?
Well, there's quite a few doors there, actually, maybe Dr. Lester Levy, but what main thing is, we'll go through the usual channels there first of all, to try and sort it out. Because our main thing is to be the voice to go and sort these things out with Auckland Transport, with the various departments. Should we get no joy there, then we've got the other routes, which is campaigning. Now, for example, we have launched our first campaign, which is going to be the West Rail campaign, retaining train services to Waitakere, and then getting that extended down the line a few kilometres to Huapai, because Kumeu is a big growth area. So that will be a campaign we're going to the people about.
So the Huapai campaign, for example, who in Auckland Transport, or what department, what areas where do you probe, which rocks are you looking under?
We know quite well who the rocks are that we need to go and move and knock on their doors. So we'll be making way there. But first of all, we're going to get the public support, because we already know the public out in West Auckland are underserved with public transport. So now it's engaging them and using people power to say, hey, Auckland Transport, thank you for all your options in the latest West Auckland plan, but there's an option missing, which is option 5, a train service from Kumeu to Swanson.
What's different about you?
Yeah, okay. So Campaign for Better Transport look after key infrastructure, such as getting the airport rail line built. They might be looking at other issues, like even promoting to get the North Western Busway built. We actually look at what's happening right now on the ground, and that's our focus. Transport Blog, of course, they report on issues, and Generation Zero do a great job as well. But our difference is we're going to be there at bus stops, at wharves, and at train stations, talking about real live people and how they move around today.
Great. Local governments around the world are piling into the housing finance market. This week, Auckland Council joined the party by offering a guarantee to a Tyndall Foundation initiative of $60 million.
So Auckland Council has a range of influences on delivery of housing in Auckland, perhaps from direct intervention for example, planning and land release, resource consents and the timeliness of those, and the SHA and national legislation, through to influence. And I'd put influence in the affordability space and the social housing. And this tool that we're proposing today, the housing guarantee, is one of those influence type tools. And then of course we have influence on Housing New Zealand and MD around productivity and supply chain. So I just want to make sure that we all understand this is one of the tools in the toolkit. It sits at the influence end where we have a discrete opportunity to intervene in the market. Okay? What we're asking for today, and Alan and the team will talk through it in more detail, is approval to create a $6 million bond. Okay, what does that $6 million bond give us? And it fits within the Strategic Development Fund and will be sourced from that. It's a $100 million fund that you have approved for at $10 million a year. What we expect from that bond is to be able to give community housing providers, which is the government's intervention in this sector, we expect to be able to give community housing providers the sort of guarantee or sort of guarantee they will seek or would benefit from when looking to raise debt, okay, over their own developments, and allows them to secure that debt at a price point that they wouldn't have otherwise achieved. We expect the effect of that to be to reduce the average cost of a house by some $6,000 to $8,000. Okay, the $6 million guarantee we're proposing, we think will leverage $30 million worth of capital to build homes in Auckland. Alan has suggested to me that will allow some 200 homes to be built that would not otherwise be built in that affordable sector. And at a saving of $6,000 to $8,000 times 200, you can run your numbers in terms of the overall benefit in terms of lowering the cost of homes. What our initial discussions suggest is, apart from the $6 million, the opportunity and the interest in the private sector is quite considerable. So we have some high net worth individuals and some other organisations, including banks, that would be willing to expand this bond guarantee principle, which allows us to leverage more than the 30 million, could go up in multiples of that. But they're looking for council to take a lead. And so that's the request today. That's the approval that we seek. Support for this recommendation, allowing us to take a lead, which will then bring in other money and allow us to further leverage 30 million upwards. Okay. The only remaining question is, why does Auckland Council have to do this? Why isn't central government? So my take on that is that central government's looking at a range of its tools that it can to intervene in terms of housing supply, and their main focus, their primary focus currently has been on the community housing provider sector, where they've looked to expand the delivery capability across the market to be more than just Housing New Zealand. They may well join us in something like this for Auckland and the rest of New Zealand. We're not sure, and I don't...
I'm hearing a lot of... I can pick up a lot of enthusiasm and good intentions here, but in my experience, that is when one should be cautious. I'm just worried that starting off on a basis of good intentions, but with a certain element of confusion, may not turn out that well. But I may be wrong. I just want to ask, when we say endorse the principle of an Auckland housing bond guarantee, so endorsing the principle but subject to approving $6 million guarantee, that's confusing to me. This is way more than endorsing. Endorsing a principle is one thing, guaranteeing money is another thing altogether. So that's a point that worries me. Is there a response on that?
Yeah, I think it's
So in hindsight, Madam Chair, we should take out the words "the principle" and probably endorse the provision of an Auckland housing bond guarantee subject to the delegation.
That's good. But, you know, again, shouldn't that have been thought about? Okay. The next thing. there seems to be reliance on. I'm going to ask about international best practice, where this is. We know that in the past, back in the old days, the public sector, when confronted with slums and a housing crisis in Auckland and across New Zealand, just went ahead and got the houses built. And they're still there, a lot of them. But we live in a new world. But people seem to be continually looking for a painless way out. So, you know, this is hands-free, endorse a principle and step back, and exciting things are going to happen. Well, maybe. But in terms of philanthropic investment, that's another thing that worries me, because I understood philanthropy, which is of which there is a long and noble tradition, is one thing, and wise another thing altogether. And muddling these things up may make accountability difficult. Are you clear in your mind the difference between philanthropic investment, which in some ways seems like somebody's willing to lose money, and investment, and the metrics and measurements around these?
I'll probably just respond, and then I'll ask Scott to add. I mean, my understanding of the philanthropic sector is that a lot of them have two ways in which they provide money for the objectives of why they've been established. One is that they provide grant funding, and the other, which is obviously a freebie, and another way is investment, which they expect a level of return. Now, I suppose the philanthropic aspect of the return is they may well expect a lower level of return, so hence they invest in sort of socially responsible investments. So, I mean, that's my understanding.
I can't think of any reason that this council wouldn't accept this and accept it with open hearts and open minds, because, first of all, we all signed off on the strategic housing strategic action plan. This is one of the 12 actions, and I'm hopefully at the end of this term I'll have gone through every action on it, because we need to. So this was action 12. So we're just seeing through something that we started. We've heard about it being best practice internationally and in New Zealand, and we know about Queenstown. But what it will do is grow the sector, and that's where we're stuck. That's where we're stuck. This will give them the wings to fly, and hopefully instead of 300, it will be 3,000 in the next 10 years. And the government supports that too. I know they do. I've heard them say it in this room. So what is the issue? I know you haven't had time to read this very, very late report, but you should actually turn to page 15. The latest median house price in Auckland, 606,000. Now remember when we did the stuff through the unitary plan about the 5 to 10% affordable housing, that's based on the median house price. Well, who can afford that? And that's my issue, and that's why this is so important. Nobody can afford that, especially not low-income families. And what we're doing here in supporting this is ensuring that we do build affordable, and I mean truly affordable housing of good quality. Now, you won't find much of that around here. You certainly won't find it down at the waterfront. You won't find it in Hobsonville. And we went on a bus tour up north, and I don't think I saw any house that was anything close to being under about $606,000. Am I right? The councillors were on the bus tour? There are no cheap houses over the bridge. Sorry, George. No, couldn't see any. So we need to actually put our money...
You could have gone to George's place.
You can move over there.
How about Wayne's?
Councillor
Got a water tank.
Councillor Casey, floor's yours.
I'm just closing. We need to put our money where our mouth is, in this case.
The Council's cost of growth study was due for delivery at the Auckland Development Committee meeting last week, over a year late. At the last minute, the item was pulled from the agenda again.
It's fit for the kind
Committee
of
Chair
decisions that
Penny
we
Hulse
want
will
to
probably be
make
mayor
as a
next term.
I think we'd all agree.
This debate says a lot about the style of leadership we could expect from her when she's in the hot seat.
We had hoped to bring this report to the committee today. There has been a delay in completing this report, and I accept that. Part of that delay has been that We have had information from 8 legacy councils, the obtaining of that information and then interpreting it, because everyone in the past collected information differently, has helped to cause that delay. It is a joint study with our MB colleagues, and we do need to provide that report to MB. We're doing that right now. We hope that their review will be complete by Christmas at the very latest, that they're comfortable. I have spoken to MB officials, and that's their intent, and so we can make that available early next year. So I do again apologise about that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I wish to respectfully inquire why we have been consistently misled that this information has been available. You know, good governance requires good information. This has been an issue that I think has been quite divisive for this council. There are those councillors who are happy to just take officers at their word and trust them, you know, we know what we're doing, let's just vote on things. And there are those who actually want information. And this and its precursor, which was, what was it called?
The cost of growth study.
The cost of growth study. We have been promised and promised and promised and promised. I would really like some further explanation on this matter, because this really comes to the heart of decisions that we need to take going into the LTP or the 18th of December.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report, and I do apologise that it was called cost of growth study, it should have been about the cost of servicing residential growth. They're different things. It's not about different urban growth paths. It's about whether or not you have different types of housing at different locations across Auckland, and whether or not they have different demands on infrastructure, and to help determine financial policy. Our finance team have been intricately involved with this study. They've taken it on board. They have acknowledged and updated the development contribution policies that has been to you to date and is consistent with the Local Government Act new requirement. So,
Madam Chair, I don't wish to be vexatious, but rebrand it, if you will. We have never seen the comprehensive data that is around the financial implications of growth for Auckland. So if we are looking at any kind of prioritisation, if we are looking at the difficult issues around rating, we need to have this information. And I really struggle with the fact that we haven't had the opportunity to be able to analyse this material. And yet we were told at the Infrastructure Committee only a couple of hours ago that, you know, a lot of material has been prepared by different parts of our council. So why is it that there is a delay?
There has been some struggle around the quality of the data. How legacy councils collected their cost of growth data differed between the councils, and certainly how we collect it now. And there are assumptions that sat inside that. Yes, parts of the council family have been providing good information, and you heard that from Craig McElroy and the Stormwater team this morning, which is good. So we have confidence around some elements, but when you're wanting the certainty to make policy decisions at the scale that we're looking for, we haven't been able to provide it. So that is the delay. It has been a lot more challenging, a lot more difficult to do than what we originally envisaged. Our objective is to get the MB support for what has been done, and to bring that to you in the form of a workshop in the new year and lay it out and talk about it in a meaningful and open fashion.
Madam Chair, with great respect, Mr Kimpton was not here during the last term of council. There was quite some division amongst councillors around the process as we worked our way up to things. There were differences around whether we were dealing with a high growth or a low growth scenario. But I have it on record and I have it in writing that the former CEO of Auckland Council promised us a cost of growth.
Okay.
And so I'm not blaming you,
Yes,
but I'm saying that nor am I misleading officers. That was a commitment that was made to the elected members, and this is a really sore point.
So I accept that. I'm only, and you're correct, I wasn't here in the first term. I've only been here for 1 year. I'm reflecting on what I've seen from the methodology. And so that's what I've articulated. The methodology that the market's responded to, the consultants provided, that's where we're at.
Okay. And I think, councillors, for those of us who were here in the last term, the critical issue is that we have information that's fit for purpose. We know what we need this information for. If the information is not fit for purpose, surely it's better to do it well, to get it signed off in partnership with MB, who will be a tough partner in having a look at whether the information works, and getting the right information that's fit for the kind of decisions that you're wanting to make. Councillor Fletcher, I think we'd all agree with that. No one wants to go off half-cocked. Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, Madam
sure
Chair, I do want to support Councillor Fletcher in her moment of frustration, and just to I suppose go over this again. The council at the beginning of 2013 called for a request for expression of interest to do a cost of growth study, and that request for information or request of interest, it was there was 4 pages of things that they wanted the contractor or the potential consultant to look at, and so I was very interested in some of those issues. So in February I asked for the cost of growth study. No, the cost of growth study is not yet ready, councillor. In March I again asked for the cost of growth study. No, it's not ready yet, councillor. I asked again in May, in April, in June, and in July, and then I was told, well, actually, it's not a cost of growth study, councillor. It's now called the cost of servicing residential growth study, councillor. So you can understand my frustration, Councillor Fletcher's frustration, when we get, first of all, we get fobbed off, or seemingly fobbed off, and I don't want to. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody by saying that, but quite clearly. We're given an expectation that it would have been ready in April. I was then given an expectation that it would be ready in May, June, July, and then it will be ready in September, but it's called something else.
And
now at the last moment, it's on the agenda, and at the very last moment, it's withdrawn. And at the same time, we're asked to, as Councillor Casey has correctly pointed out, we're asked to fill in a survey to determine how good the information coming before us is. We get late information or get no information. Thank you.
Frustration duly noted. Let's move on.
Councillors,
I'm a little bit amazed that we can spend, in a very time-constrained environment, half an hour talking about a report that isn't here. There's nothing to add. The report isn't here.
It's about accountability.
Councillor, you've been given an explanation. All the talking in the world isn't going to make the report available now. We will have the report as has been promised. It will be.
I've been promised it.
And I know, and we just have to go. Frustration noted. Let's actually have a report that works for the purpose to which it was initially requested. If it's not the right report, then there's no point. Councillors, no, we're not going to take more questions on why we haven't got a report. Item number.
Thanks for watching the All About Auckland show. I hope you found the ideas interesting. To watch the show again or sign up for our newsletter, go to www.allaboutauckland.com. You can follow us on Facebook or via our Twitter handle, AllAboutAKL. Next week we'll be looking at the deferral of the Central Rail Loop.